There are buildings that do not merely stand in time. They hold it, not like a clock holds seconds, ticking them forward in neat procession, but the way a deep forest holds silence, the way a cave holds echoes, the way old stone holds memory. Step into one of the great cathedrals of Europe. Let the heavy wooden door close behind you, and just stand there for a moment. Feel it. The air changes. It thickens. It cools. It presses gently against your skin as though you've walked into something alive. The outside world, with its engines and screens and noise, falls away. Inside, time doesn't pass. It lingers. Above you, ribs of stone rise like the skeleton of some ancient beast. Pillars stretch upward into shadow. Light filters down in fractured colors, blues, reds, golds, from stained glass windows that have watched empires rise and fall. These places were built to humble you, built to lift your eyes upward, built to remind you how small you are beneath heaven. And yet, if you let your gaze drift, not to the altar, not to the saints, not to the crucifix, but higher still into the darker corners, into the margins where dust gathers and light fades, you may notice something watching you. Not a saint, not an angel, not a demon, a face, half hidden in curling stone leaves, eyes that peer out from ivy, a mouth that does not speak, but from which vines spill endlessly, frozen in mid-growth. Tendrils coil from his lips. Oak leaves frame his brow. Sometimes his expression is serene, sometimes amused, sometimes twisted in something close to agony. He is not carved once. He is carved hundreds of times, thousands, in churches across England, France, Germany, Spain, Scotland, in monasteries and abbeys and quiet parish chapels in villages that barely exist anymore. He stares down from ceilings, from archways, from columns that hold up sacred roofs, from manuscript margins where monks once copied Holy Scripture by candlelight. He is everywhere and nowhere mentioned. No sermon names him. No scripture describes him. No prayer is addressed to him. And yet he is there, watching, waiting, for centuries. You've seen him before, even if you didn't know it. On a weathered pub sign, swinging in the rain. Carved into an old oak door in the countryside. Hidden in the woodwork of an ancestral manor house. A face of leaves. A man made of forest. The Green Man. But that name, that certainty, that sense of identity, it's modern. For most of history, he had no name at all, which makes his survival even stranger. How did a wild, leaf-covered face come to live in the very heart of Christian cathedrals? Structures built to replace the old pagan world. Was he a prisoner? A conquered god reduced to decoration? Or something more dangerous was he allowed to remain? To understand him, we have to go back. Far back. Before cathedrals. Before Christianity. Before Rome. Before recorded history could neatly label gods and classify belief. We have to search for something more subtle than a religion. We have to search for an impulse. Because the Green Man did not begin as a god. He began as a pattern, a recurring image, an idea that appeared again and again across ancient Europe, like seeds scattered by the wind. The idea was simple. Fuse the human face with the living world. Take the seat of identity, the face, and let it dissolve into leaves. Let hair become vines. Let brows become branches. Let mouths give birth to forests. And this idea, it's older than memory. Travel now to Iron Age Europe, before roads were straight, before cities were stone, when the land was thick with forest and the night sky was untouched by artificial light. The Celtic peoples did not see nature as scenery. They lived inside it. To them, the forest was not empty space between settlements. It was presence, alive, breathing, watching. Every river had a spirit. Every hill held a story. Every grove could be sacred. The boundary between this world and the other world was thin, permeable, and easily crossed. And their art reflects this. If you look at Celtic metalwork, shields pulled from riverbeds, torques worn around the necks of kings, you'll notice something unusual. Nothing is static. Lines curve into spirals. Spirals flow into faces. Faces dissolve back into patterns. A vine becomes an eyebrow. An eyebrow becomes a river. A river becomes a serpent. There is no hard border between human and natural form. because for them, there was no separation. The human head was sacred. It was believed to hold the soul. To merge it with vegetation was not decorative. It was metaphysical. It was a statement. We are not above the forest. We are part of it. And sometimes we are it. You can almost see the green man forming here. Not fully realized, not yet frozen into stone, but stirring in the collective imagination. A face emerging from foliage. A presence within the leaves. Then Rome came, and Rome brought order. Straight roads, engineered aqueducts, law, hierarchy, walls. The Roman Empire sought to tame the wilderness, to measure it, claim it, tax it. And yet, even Rome could not entirely erase the ancient image. In villas across the empire, from Italy to Britain, archaeologists have found decorative carvings known as leaf masks. Faces framed in foliage. Gods with hair of vines. Beards that twist into seaweed. One of the most striking examples emerged from a field in Suffolk, England. A farmer's plow struck silver. Buried beneath the soil for over 1,600 years was a Roman treasure hoard. Dishes, bowls, intricate silverwork. At the center of one magnificent platter was a face. Powerful, bearded, his features framed not by hair, but by flowing marine vegetation. It was likely Oceanus, the sea god, his beard made of waterweed, his identity fused with his element. Even at the height of Roman power, artists were still compelled by the fusion of humanity and nature. But something changed after Rome fell. Empires crumble. Faith shifts. Europe transformed. Christianity rose not as one belief among many, but as the belief. The old gods were dismissed, reclassified as demons, or forgotten entirely. Forests, once sacred, became places of danger. The wilderness became something to fear, to conquer, to cut back. And yet, in the very structures built to replace the pagan world, in the heart of the cathedral, he appeared. Not once, not twice, but everywhere, beginning around the 11th and 12th centuries. As great stone churches rose across Europe, stonemasons began carving a strange figure into their sacred architecture. They carved him high above the congregation, into roof bosses, onto column capitals, along archways, into cloisters, into hidden corners where casual eyes would never linger. A face, surrounded by leaves, sometimes peaceful, sometimes grinning, sometimes screaming, and from his mouth vegetation pours. Why? Why would medieval Christian builders fill churches with what looks unmistakably like a pagan forest spirit? No official doctrine explains him. No church record commissions him by name. And yet there he is. Hundreds, thousands. It's as if the forest itself pushed its way back into the sacred space. As if stone could not fully keep the wild out. And perhaps it never could. This is where the mystery deepens. Because the green man in medieval churches takes several forms. And each one feels intentional. The first is subtle, the foliate head. Here the face is almost lost beneath leaves. You don't see where man ends and forest begins. He is not wearing foliage. He is made of it. The second is more striking, the disgorging head. A human face clearly visible. And from his mouth, vines erupt, sometimes gently, sometimes violently, as if he is breathing the forest into existence, as if the world grows from his speech. The third form is darker, disturbing. Leaves burst not only from his mouth, but from his eyes, ears, nostrils. He appears overwhelmed, consumed, nature reclaiming flesh. These carvings are not accidents. They required labor, intention, time. So what do they mean? Was this a hidden pagan survival? A quiet rebellion carved by stonemasons whose ancestors once worshipped in groves? Or was it something else? Something far more unexpected? Because medieval Christianity had its own powerful image of life emerging from death. There was a legend, widely told, about the origin of the cross of Christ. It begins with Adam, the first man. On his deathbed, he sends his son Seth back to the gates of Eden to ask for a seed from the tree of knowledge. An angel grants the seed. Seth places it in Adam's mouth as he dies. And from that grave, a tree grows. That tree, the legend says, would one day become the wood of the cross. Life emerging from death. Salvation growing from the mouth of the first man. Now, imagine sitting in a medieval church, hearing that story in a sermon, then looking up and seeing a face with leaves pouring from its mouth. Suddenly, the image changes. The green man is no longer pagan. He is allegory, resurrection, eternal life, the cycle of decay and rebirth. So which is it? Pagan ghost? Christian symbol? The answer may be both. And that ambiguity is exactly why he survived. He belonged to everyone and to no one. He was flexible, adaptable, a symbol that could wear different meanings in different centuries. And so he endured, silent, patient, watching from the stone. But he was not confined there, because while the carved green man watched from cathedral ceilings, another green man walked the earth, and he was very much alive. While the green man watched in silence from the cold ribs of cathedral stone, another green man was moving, breathing, sweating beneath real leaves, laughing in the open air. You have to leave the church to find him. Step back out into the daylight, into the market square, into the mud of a country lane in early spring. The medieval world was not governed by theology alone. For most people, life was not structured around doctrine. It was structured around seasons. Winter meant hunger. Spring meant survival. Summer meant labor. Autumn meant reckoning. The turning of a year was not symbolic. It was life or death. And when the long dark of winter finally loosened its grip, something had to be done. The return of green was too important to leave uncelebrated. Across England, across Germany, across the Balkans and the Slavic lands, villagers marked the arrival of spring with ritual. Not quiet prayer, not solemn liturgy, but noise, music, laughter, masks, leaves. In Tudor and Elizabethan England, during great civic pageants, royal entries, victory parades, midsummer festivals, a strange figure would often appear at the front of the procession. He was called the Wild Man, the Woodwose, a creature of the forest. He was covered head to toe in foliage, moss, or rough, shaggy fibers meant to mimic fur and bark. Sometimes he carried a club. Sometimes he roared. Sometimes he simply walked in heavy, exaggerated steps as though unused a pavement. He was chaos stepping into civilization, the untamed world entering the city gates. He thrilled the crowd and unsettled them because the wild man was not evil, but he was not safe either. He represented the raw, masculine vitality of the forest, strength without refinement, power without law. And in records from the 16th century, these leaf-covered performers were sometimes referred to by a simple name. Green men, not carvings, not decorations. Living men, men who, for a day, became the forest. This is where the stone face and the breathing body begin to merge. Because the green man was never just something to look at. He was something to become. Now imagine London in the 18th century. Coal smoke hangs in the air. The city is crowded, loud, alive. It is May Day, and through the streets moves something impossible. A walking tower of greenery. A great conical structure made of woven wicker, completely covered in fresh leaves. Hawthorn, ivy, birch, decorated with ribbons and flowers. Inside this living cage is a man, often a chimney sweep. On this day, he is no longer a laborer. He is no longer anonymous. He is Jack in Green, the spirit of summer embodied. He dances through the streets. Musicians follow him. Children run alongside him. Coins are tossed. Allez flows. Laughter erupts. For one single day, the city belongs to the forest. But there is something deeper happening here. This is not just costume. It is transformation. The man inside the leaves disappears. He becomes vessel. He becomes symbol. He becomes the return of life itself. And at the end of the day, the leafy structure is taken apart. The branches distributed among the crowd. Pieces carried home for luck. The spirit released back into the land. It is ritual dismemberment, a gentle sacrifice. The green man dies so that summer may live. And this pattern repeats far beyond England. Travel east to the villages of Croatia and Slovenia. Late April, the feast of St. George. But alongside the Christian saint walks another figure, older, greener. Zeleny Yurai, Green George. A young man is wrapped entirely in fresh branches, only his eyes visible. He is led from house to house. Fields are blessed as he passes, livestock touched with greenery for protection. Villagers pluck leaves from his costume, carrying them into their homes. He is not decoration. He is fertility in motion. Folklorists trace this custom back to the ancient Slavic god Jarilo, a youthful deity of spring and vegetation who returns each year from the underworld. Legend says that wherever Jarilo stepped, green life sprang up behind him. The earth awakened beneath his feet. This is the Green Man in mythic form, the divine footfall that wakes the world. What becomes clear is this. The carved faces in churches and the dancing figures in festivals are not separate traditions. They are reflections of the same instinct. Humanity looking at the overwhelming force of nature and giving it a face. A face that can be celebrated. A face that can be feared. A face that can be negotiated with. Because nature is not gentle. Winter kills. Crops fail. Storms destroy. But spring returns. And that return feels like mercy. So we ritualize it. We embody it. We carve it into stone so it cannot be forgotten. For centuries, the silent green man in the cathedral and the dancing green man in the street existed side by side. One frozen, one alive, one sacred, one chaotic. Two expressions of the same need. The need to believe that life will come back. That green will return. That death is not final. But then something shifted. The modern world arrived. And with it came smoke, steel, factories, railways cutting through forests, cities expanding like concrete vines. The rhythm of the seasons began to feel less immediate, less sacred. Progress demanded efficiency. Nature became resource, timber, coal, land to be cleared. The old rituals faded. May Day became quaint. Jack and the Green shrank into memory. The wild man retreated into storybooks. The stone carvings remained, but they were overlooked, misunderstood, cataloged as decorative oddities. The Green Man began to fragment, a face without context, a dancer without myth. But the story was not over, because in the 19th century, as industry roared louder and the countryside grew quieter, something else stirred. Nostalgia, a romantic hunger for what was being lost. Artists and poets began looking backward. To the Middle Ages, to forests, to folklore. The Gothic revival swept across Europe. Cathedrals were restored, medieval styles imitated, and in that revival, architects rediscovered the foliate head. The leafy faces bloomed once more on new buildings. Parliament halls, universities, town halls, even the Palace of Westminster bore them. The Green Man was returning, but still without a unified identity. Still unnamed, still scattered across centuries, until one woman made a connection that would change everything. Her name was Lady Julia Raglan. It was 1939, on the edge of another world war. She was studying church carvings in Monmouthshire when she noticed the leafy faces. But she did not stop at the church door. She looked outward, to the Jack in the Green, to the old pub signs named the Green Man, to the records of Tudor pageants. And she proposed something radical. These were not separate images, not coincidence, not mere decoration. They were fragments of one ancient tradition, a single enduring figure, a pagan spirit of fertility and rebirth who had survived Christianity by hiding in plain sight. And she gave him a name, the Green Man. Her article, The Green Man in Church Architecture, ignited imagination. Scholars debated her evidence. Some criticized her conclusions, but the idea took root because it felt true. It felt like something remembered rather than invented. Suddenly, the thousand scattered carvings were unified. The dancing figures had ancestry. The pub signs had lineage. The Green Man was reborn, not as artifact, but as personality. And the timing could not have been more powerful, because after the devastation of World War II, the world entered a new era of anxiety. Nuclear fear, environmental damage, industrial sprawl, And once again, humanity felt dangerously disconnected from the natural world. And once again, we needed a face to look back at us from the forest. The Green Man was ready, ready to step out of stone, ready to speak again. When you're ready, say next part, and we'll move into his modern rebirth, literature, film, environmentalism, and his return to the center of culture. The Green Man did not return quietly. He returned the way spring returns, slow at first, almost unnoticed, and then suddenly everywhere. In the decades after the Second World War, something fundamental shifted in human awareness. For the first time in history, we began to understand that the natural world was not infinite. Forests could vanish, rivers could die, air itself could become toxic. The industrial dream that once felt unstoppable began to look fragile. And in that growing unease, the Green Man found fertile soil. At first, he resurfaced in literature, not always by name, but unmistakably in spirit. The archetype had been there long before Lady Raglan ever wrote her article. In fact, one of the most powerful literary embodiments of the Green Man had been waiting quietly in a 14th century poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Picture the scene. Camelot, a hall blazing with firelight. King Arthur's court celebrating the new year. Armor gleaming, goblets raised. And then, without warning, the doors burst open. A giant rides in, entirely green. Not just his cloak, not just his horse. His skin, his beard, his hair. Even the wood of his axe glows like fresh moss. In one hand, he carries a branch of holly, an evergreen symbol of life. In the other, a massive axe, an instrument of death. He is both life and destruction, fertility and violence, renewal and decay. He challenges the knights to a beheading game. Strike him once now, he says, and in 1 year he will return the blow. It sounds absurd, until a knight accepts. And when the Green Knight's head is severed, it does not end him. He picks it up, holds aloft, and rides away, alive, watching, waiting. He is nature itself in that moment, impossible to kill, cut down in winter, returning in spring. The Green Knight is not simply a monster. He is a test, a force that exposes weakness, a reminder that beyond the walls of civilization lies a power that does not obey human rules. Long before he had the name Green Man, the archetype was already alive in story. And once people began looking for him, they found him everywhere. Look at Robin Hood, the outlaw of Sherwood Forest, dressed in Lincoln green, living beneath the greenwood tree. He is not merely hiding in the forest. He belongs to it. He enforces a wild justice. He robs the powerful, protects the vulnerable, moves like a spirit between trunks and branches. In some May Day traditions, Robin and Maid Marian presided over spring festivals as symbolic king and queen of the season. Again, the fusion of human figure and seasonal renewal. The Green Man translated into hero. Then there is Peter Pan, eternal youth, clad in green leaves, living in Neverland, a place outside of time, beyond adulthood, beyond industrial order. He represents untamed vitality, refusal to grow rigid, refusal to decay into routine. Even if J.M. Barrie never consciously invoked the Green Man, the pattern is there. The boy who will not age. The spirit of nature resisting the march of time. By the late 20th century, creators began invoking the Green Man directly. In fantasy novels, in neo-pagan texts, in environmental manifestos, in horror films where nature strikes back against human arrogance. The 1973 film The Wicker Man does not show the Green Man explicitly, but his presence saturates the story. An isolated island community practicing a form of revived paganism, fertility rites, crop cycles, human sacrifice offered to restore failing harvests. The pub in the film is named the Green Man. The archetype looms in the background, reminding viewers that nature worship is not always gentle. It can demand, it can take, it can burn. Then came modern fantasy epics. In Game of Thrones, ancient weirwood trees stand with faces carved into their trunks, watching, weeping red sap like blood. The old gods of the forest bearing silent witness to centuries of war and betrayal. The resemblance is unmistakable. A face in the wood, an ancient presence rooted in bark and leaf. The Green Man had fully crossed into global mythology, no longer confined to Europe, no longer tied to church architecture. He had become universal. Artists embraced him. Massive public sculptures rose in cities, leaf-covered faces emerging from steel and stone. In Wales, an enormous turf maze shaped like a green man's face invites visitors to walk the lines of his features, literally tracing his contours with their steps. In Birmingham, a towering 12-meter green man dominates the skyline near the custard factory, asserting that even urban landscapes can host ancient spirits. He began appearing on jewelry, tattoos, album covers, environmental protest banners. He became emblem rather than relic. And then, perhaps most astonishing of all, he stepped onto one of the most traditional stages in the modern world. In the spring of 2023, the official invitation to the coronation of King Charles III was revealed. Ornate, floral, intricate with symbolic plants and animals. And at the very bottom of the design, forming its foundation, was a face made of oak leaves, ivy, and hawthorn. The Green Man. The palace described him simply as an ancient figure from British folklore, symbolizing spring and rebirth. Think about that. The same leafy figure who once may have been dismissed as pagan residue. The same face that hid in cathedral ceilings, now printed on an invitation seen by hundreds of millions worldwide. No longer hidden, no longer marginal. He had moved from shadow to center, from forgotten carving to national emblem, from ghost to guest of honor. And yet, for all this visibility, he remains what he has always been, silent. He does not preach. He does not demand doctrine. He does not offer commandments. He simply watches. The reason he endures is not because of historical proof. Scholars still debate Lady Raglan's theory. They argue over whether the church carvings truly connect to folk festivals, whether the lineage is continuous or reconstructed. But the debate almost doesn't matter, because symbols survive not by academic certainty, but by emotional resonance. And the Green Man resonates. He resonates because he embodies a promise older than language. After winter, green returns. After death, something grows. After destruction, life insists. That cycle is not theology. It is biology. It is the pulse of the planet. It is the rhythm of our own bodies. We decay. We regenerate. We despair. We hope. The Green Man is that hope with a face. He is the acknowledgement that we are not separate from the forest. We are not observers of nature. We are expressions of it. The same force that pushes sap through trees pushes blood through veins. The same cycle that turns leaves to soil turns generations to memory. In an age of screens and algorithms, of climate anxiety and vanishing wilderness, the Green Man feels less like folklore and more like warning. He is rooted, organic, ancient. He reminds us that progress without balance becomes ruin, that civilization without humility becomes brittle, that walls cannot truly keep the wild out because the wild is not only outside us, it is within. Perhaps that is why his face is both serene and unsettling. In some carvings he smiles. In others he grimaces as vines burst from his eyes. Creation and consumption, growth and decay. Nature is not sentimental. It is cyclical. It feeds on death to create life. The Green Man does not deny that truth. He embodies it. And that is why he still watches from stone ceilings. Why he still dances in spring festivals revived in villages and cities alike. Why he appears in modern fantasy and environmental protest. Why his face can sit comfortably beside crown and cross without contradiction. He is ambiguity carved in leaf. He is continuity without scripture. He is the conversation between humanity and the living world made visible. When you stand in a cathedral now and look up into the shadows, when you see that face framed in oak and ivy, you are not just looking at medieval art. You're looking at a memory older than Rome, older than Christianity, older than writing. A reminder that beneath steel and concrete, beneath policy and progress, beneath belief and doubt, the green world waits. Patient, persistent, unfinished, And somewhere, in the gathering dark above the arches, the watcher in the stone still stares down, not judging, not condemning, simply waiting for us to remember. If you'd like, say, final part, and I'll craft a powerful cinematic closing section that ties everything together with a slow, emotional YouTube-style ending monologue. And yet, even after all of this, the poetry, the films, the festivals revived, the royal invitations, something about him remains unfinished. Because the Green Man is not just a relic that resurfaced. He is not merely an aesthetic. He is not just a symbol we print on banners when it suits us. He is older than our movements, older than our arguments, older than the language we use to describe crisis. To truly understand why he refuses to disappear, we have to look inward. Strip away the stone. Strip away the folklore. Strip away even the history. What remains? A face emerging from leaves. A human identity dissolving into the natural world. That image unsettles us. Because modern civilization is built on separation. We separate cities from forests, industry from ecology, humanity from wilderness. We speak of nature as if it is somewhere else. A place we visit, a resource we manage, a problem we solve. But the Green Man does not allow that distance. His entire form is contradiction. He is human. He is not human. He is civilized architecture. He is wild vegetation. He is carved into churches. He belongs to forests. He refuses the boundary. And that refusal is deeply uncomfortable in an age obsessed with control. Think about the oldest fear we carry, the fear of being swallowed by something larger than ourselves. The ocean, the forest at night, the dark. In many of the more disturbing carvings, leaves burst from the Green Man's eyes and nostrils. He appears consumed, overtaken. It looks like invasion, like loss of identity. But look closer. It is not an attack. It is integration. The vines do not strangle him. They emerge from him. He is not being devoured by nature. He is continuous with it. That idea runs against centuries of cultural conditioning. For generations, we have defined progress as the conquering of the wild, clearing forests, draining marshes, building upward and outward, measuring and dividing. But beneath that story is another one, older, quieter, the recognition that we never truly left the forest. Our lungs still trade breath with trees. Our food still depends on soil. Our water still depends on cycles older than any empire. The Green Man survives because he embodies that truth without speaking it. He does not accuse. He does not preach environmental doctrine. He simply exists as a reminder. In the 21st century, as climate patterns shift and species vanish, and entire ecosystems strain under pressure, the Green Man's face feels different. Less decorative, more urgent. He is no longer just about spring returning. He is about whether spring will return. His ancient promise feels fragile, and yet he does not look afraid. That may be the most striking thing about him. Across centuries of carving, across regions and styles, his expression is rarely panic. Often is calm, sometimes amused, occasionally stern, but never desperate, because the Green Man does not represent the survival of humanity. He represents the persistence of life, and life, in its vast and indifferent resilience, continues. Forests burn, forests regrow, ice melts, seas rise, species vanish, new forms emerge. The cycle turns. That does not absolve us. It does not comfort us, but it does place us in perspective. The Green Man is not a mascot for comfort. He is a symbol of continuity, a reminder that we are part of a system far older and far more complex than our current age. There's a reason his face fits so naturally into modern fantasy and ancient myth alike. Archetypes do not belong to a single era. They surface whenever the conditions are right. In our era, anxious, technologically saturated, environmentally strained, is fertile ground for an archetype that reconnects us to roots. Literally, he is the counterimage to the glowing screen, the antidote to digital abstraction, a face made not of pixels but of bark and leaf. Something tactile, something organic, something that reminds us of wind and soil and rain. And perhaps that is why he continues to appear in new forms. in murals painted on city walls, in eco-villages that carve his likeness above communal gardens, in modern pagan ceremonies that consciously invoke him as the horned god reborn, in children's books where trees whisper and forests protect, in environmental protests where his face rises above crowds like a green standard. He adapts, just as he always has. That adaptability is not weakness. It is survival. The Green Man has never needed a rigid mythology. He thrives in ambiguity. He can be pagan survival or Christian allegory. He can be terrifying or benevolent. He can be folklore or fantasy. He can be national emblem or countercultural icon. He does not fracture under reinterpretation. He grows, like ivy finding new stone. And so we return to where we began. A cathedral interior. Dust and shafts of colored light. The hum of silence. You tilt your head back and see him there, tucked into the arch above. A face half lost in foliage, carved by hands long turned to earth. What did the mason think as he shaped those leaves? Was it devotion? Defiance? Simple artistic instinct? Did he even know that centuries later people would debate the meaning of his work? Perhaps it did not matter. Perhaps what mattered was the impulse itself, the need to carve life into stone, to ensure that even in a building dedicated to heaven, the earth had a presence. Because that is the true power of the Green Man. He bridges what we constantly try to separate. Sacred and wild, church and forest, past and future, death and rebirth. He is not the god of a lost religion. He is not merely the mascot of environmentalism. He is a mirror, and what we see in him depends on the age we inhabit. In times of abundance, he is celebration. In times of fear, he is warning. In times of spiritual hunger, he is mystery. But always, always, he is green, and green is the color of becoming. Not finished, not fixed, growing. So when you next walk beneath trees and feel the filtered light shifting above you, when wind moves through leaves with a sound almost like whispering, when you notice moss reclaiming stone at the edge of a forgotten wall, remember the face in the cathedral. Remember the dancer wrapped in branches. Remember the knight who lifted his own severed head and rode away laughing. These are not separate stories. They are variations on one ancient conversation, a conversation between humanity and the living world. It began long before us. It will continue long after. The Green Man does not demand that we worship him. He does not ask for temples or offerings. He asks only that we notice, that we remember, that we recognize the pulse of the earth not as background noise, but as shared heartbeat. The watcher in the stone has never left. He has simply been waiting for us to look up. There is one more layer to this story, one that isn't carved in stone or recorded in manuscripts, one that doesn't live in festival accounts or royal invitations. It lives somewhere quieter, somewhere closer, because after tracing him through centuries of architecture, folklore, literature, revival, and reinvention, we are left with a final question. Why does his face feel familiar? Not historically familiar, not academically familiar, personally familiar. There's a strange recognition that happens when you first truly notice him. It's subtle, a flicker, as if you've seen him before in a dream you can't quite remember. That recognition might be the deepest root of all. Long before we built cathedrals, long before we forged empires, our ancestors lived in direct relationship with the land. Not metaphorical, immediate, intimate. They read weather in the air. They tracked seasons in bark and soil. They depended on the mood of rivers. They listened to wind not as background noise, but as information. And in that world, it would have been impossible to see humanity as separate from nature. Identity was not isolated from environment. You were the forest, of the valley, of the coastline, of the plain. The Green Man may not be the survival of a specific god. He may be something even deeper, a memory of how we once understood ourselves, a memory encoded not in scripture, but in instinct. That instinct still surfaces in strange ways. The calm you feel when walking through trees, the way your breathing slows near water, the pull toward mountains, the ache for open sky after too long indoors. These reactions are not romantic inventions. They are physiological. neurological, ancient. We evolved in green spaces. Our senses were shaped by them. The color green itself is the easiest for the human eye to process. The patterns of branching trees mirror the branching of neurons and blood vessels. The rhythm of waves echoes the rhythm of breath. When we look at the green man, a human face made of leaves, something aligns. It feels symbolic, yes, but also feels correct, as if the image is less a fantasy and more a recognition of structure. The same architecture that builds forests builds us, and perhaps that is why he survives every era's attempt to categorize him. Scholars can debate origins. Historians can question continuity. Theologians can reinterpret symbolism. But the archetype doesn't depend on consensus. It depends on resonance. And it resonates because the separation between humanity and nature has always been artificial. Useful, practical, but artificial. The green man erases that line, gently, without argument. He doesn't stand opposed to civilization. He peers from within it, carved into its pillars, printed onto its invitations, painted onto its walls. He doesn't tear the city down. He grows through it. Ivy on brick, roots under pavement, moss between stones. He is reminder, not revolution. And that makes him powerful, because reminders linger. Revolutions burn out. There's another reason he endures. He has no dogma, no required belief, no moral code attached. He doesn't divide. He doesn't exclude. He is accessible to anyone who has ever watched winter turn spring, anyone who has planted something and waited, anyone who has lost something and hoped. That universality makes him immune to extinction. Religions rise and fall. Empires collapse. Cultural trends shift. But seasons turn. Always. And as long as that turning continues, his face has meaning. Even if we never called him Green Man. Even if Lady Raglan had never written her article. Even if the carvings had been weathered beyond recognition. The archetype would resurface. It would find a new name, a new mask, a new medium, because the pattern is older than language, and patterns are persistent. Imagine a future centuries from now. Imagine our skyscrapers in ruin, concrete cracked, glass shattered, steel rusting, trees growing through empty windows, vines claiming stairwells, moss climbing over forgotten monuments. If someone were to carve a face into that reclaimed architecture, a face framed by leaves, would it be new? Or would it simply be him again? The Green Man is not confined to Europe. He is not confined to medieval Christianity. He is not confined to folklore. He is the human recognition that life outlasts structure, that growth follows collapse, that decay feeds renewal. And in that sense, he is neither optimistic nor pessimistic. He is realistic. He reflects the cycle without judgment. That realism can be comforting or terrifying, because the cycle does not promise that everything survives. It promises that something does. And perhaps that is the final truth he holds in his silent gaze. When you look at the Green Man, you're not just looking at history. You're looking at continuity, at the unbroken thread connecting Iron Age metalwork, Roman silver, medieval stone, Tudor pageants, Victorian revival, modern fantasy, environmental protest, and royal ceremony. A thread of green running through time. But more than that, you are looking at yourself reflected in leaf and vine. Your breath shared with trees. Your body returned to soil. Your existence woven into cycles that began long before your name and will continue long after it. That realization can feel humbling, even unsettling, but can also feel grounding. Because if we are part of that cycle, then we are not isolated accidents in a hostile world. We are expressions of the same force that turns seed into forest. The same force that pushes sap upward in spring. The same force that carved rivers through rock long before cathedrals rose beside them. The Green Man does not ask us to abandon civilization. He asks us to remember its foundation. To remember that beneath concrete lies soil. Beneath doctrine lies myth. Beneath myth lies pattern. And beneath pattern lies life. So the next time you see him, whether in a cathedral arch, a pub sign swinging in rain, a festival dancer wrapped in branches, or a piece of modern art rising in steel and leaf, pause. not to analyze, not to categorize, but simply to acknowledge. The watcher in the stone, the dancer in the street, the knight who cannot be killed, the forest that returns. He has never needed words. His language is growth. His scripture is season. His cathedral is the canopy overhead. And his story is not ending. It is turning. And now we slow down. Because every long journey through history, myth, and memory eventually returns to something simple. A face, a breath, a moment of stillness. After everything we've uncovered, the Iron Age spirals, the Roman silver, the medieval stone carvings, the riotous May Day dancers, the Romantic Revival, the environmental awakening, the coronation invitation, the Green Man remains what he has always been. Silent. And that silence matters. In a world that never stops speaking, he does not argue. In an age of endless commentary, he does not explain himself. In a culture obsessed with defining, categorizing, and labeling, he resists clarity. He is not pinned down. He is not finalized. He simply watches. That may be his greatest power, because silence leaves space. Space for interpretation. Space for projection. Space for reflection. When medieval villagers looked up at him, they may have seen resurrection, or pagan memory, or simple decoration. When Victorian revivalists rediscovered him, they saw romantic medievalism. When environmental activists embraced him, they saw the spirit of the earth rising in resistance. When modern fantasy writers echo his image, they see ancient power rooted in the land. But none of those meanings cancel the others. They layer, like rings in a tree trunk, each era carving its own understanding into the same enduring shape. That layering is what makes him feel eternal. Not because he never changes, but because he changes without losing his core. And what is that core? It is this: life and humanity are not separate forces. They are expressions of the same source. The Green Man is the visual shorthand for that idea. A reminder carved again and again across centuries, so it cannot be forgotten. There's something else, too. Something subtle. Notice that the Green Man is almost always male in form. A masculine face wrapped in vegetation. But he is not the conqueror archetype. He does not dominate nature. He is not armored against it. He is not controlling it. He is intertwined with it, emerging from it. In many spiritual traditions, masculine energy has been associated with structure, authority, hierarchy. The Green Man softens that image. He represents a masculinity that is cyclical rather than rigid, fertile rather than forceful, rooted rather than towering. He does not impose order on the forest. He grows from it. That nuance may be one reason he resonates so strongly today, as modern culture reevaluates old models of strength and identity. The Green Man offers an ancient alternative. Strength not through domination, but through integration. Power not through control, but through connection. And yet he is not sentimental. He is not a gentle woodland fairy. Many of his carvings are fierce. Teeth bared, eyes wide, leaves bursting violently from every opening. Because nature is not always nurturing. It storms, it floods, it withers, it consumes. The Green Man carries that truth as well. He reminds us that growth requires decay, that fertility feeds on death, that beauty and brutality are not opposites in the natural world. They are partners. This complexity makes him impossible to simplify. He cannot be reduced to mascot. He cannot be confined to ornament. The moment we try to flatten him into something harmless, his older, wilder edge resurfaces. And perhaps that is good, because a symbol that only comforts eventually loses power. The Green Man endures because he holds tension between civilization and wilderness, between faith and folklore, between hope and warning, between life and death. And that tension is real. It is the tension we live inside every day. We build cities, but we crave forests. We invent technology, but we long for quiet. We separate ourselves from nature in theory and seek it out on weekends. We pave the ground and then plant trees along the sidewalks to soften the view. The Green Man sits at the center of that contradiction, not condemning it, not resolving it, just embodying it. That embodiment might be the final reason he refuses to disappear. Because as long as we feel that tension, as long as we are both builders and wanderers, creators and consumers, citizens and creatures, we will need an image that reflects both sides. And so he remains, high in cathedral arches, carved into ancient choirs, hidden in garden gates, painted on festival banners, emerging from modern murals in cities that barely resemble the medieval towns where he once grinned in stone. The world changes, the materials change, the meanings evolve, but the face framed in leaves continues to return. Not because of a single unbroken cult, not because of secret continuity, but because the idea is too fundamental to vanish. We are the earth. We rise from it. We return to it. And in between, we build stories to make sense of that truth. The Green Man is one of those stories. One of the oldest, one of the most adaptable, one of the most quietly persistent. If you were to walk into a cathedral tonight, alone, when the tourists have gone and the candles are low, you might hear only your own footsteps. You might feel the vastness of the stone pressing in. And if you let your eyes wander upward into the ribs and shadows, you might find him there, half hidden, patient, unmoving, but somehow alive. Not as a ghost, not as a god demanding belief, but as a reminder that outside those walls, the trees are still growing, that beneath the pavement, roots are still pushing. That winter, no matter how long, has never yet won. The Green Man does not promise that every civilization will survive. He does not promise that every species will endure. But he does promise this: the cycle continues. The turning does not stop. And in that turning, there is both warning and hope. So maybe the real question was never, who is the Green Man? Maybe the better question is, why do we keep needing him? The answer may be simple. Because every generation, in its own way, forgets. Forgets that it depends on soil and rain. Forgets that concrete cracks. Forgets that systems fail. Forgets that life is not manufactured, it grows. And every generation, in its own way, remembers again. Remembers in crisis. Remembers in spring. Remembers when a forest path feels more honest than a city street. The Green Man is that remembering carved into a face that has watched 1,000 years of forgetting and remembering. And he is still here, still green, still waiting, and perhaps still smiling. Because in the end, the story does not close with stone or scholarship or ceremony. It closes with breath. Yours, right now. Draw it in slowly. The air filling your lungs was made by leaves, released by forests, carried across oceans, filtered through branches. The boundary between you and the green world dissolves with something as ordinary as breathing. Inhale, exhale, exchange. This is the oldest ritual. Older than May-Day, older than cathedrals, older than myth. The Green Man is not only carved above you. He's enacted within you. Every pulse beneath your skin mirrors sap rising in spring. Every strand of hair, every branching vein, every network of nerves follows the same fractal geometry as roots and rivers. We did not borrow these patterns. We are these patterns. And when civilizations forget that, when towers rise so high that the soil feels distant, when nights glow brighter than stars, when silence becomes rare, the archetype returns. Not to accuse, not to punish, but to recalibrate. A face in leaves, a reminder in plain sight. Look at how he is always emerging, never fully separate from the foliage, never fully consumed by it. That in-between state is where we live too. Not entirely wild, not entirely artificial. We are threshold creatures, builders who still dream of forests, engineers who still feel awe at thunderstorms, citizens who still feel something ancient stir at the smell of rain on dry earth. Petrichor, the scent of soil awakening. There is no cathedral without quarry, no city without forest once cleared, no future without ecosystem quietly functioning beneath it all. The Green Man holds that layered truth in a single unmoving expression. Perhaps that is why he feels less like a character and more like a presence. He does not travel through time the way heroes do. He surfaces, like something perennial, cut back, forgotten, and then suddenly visible again when conditions allow. In times of abundance, he is decoration. In times of imbalance, he becomes symbol. In times of collapse, he becomes prophecy. And if you imagine the centuries ahead, storms reshaping coastlines, technologies we cannot yet name, cultures rising and dissolving. Imagine, too, that somewhere, someone will carve a face in leaf and vine again. They may not call him Green Man. They may not know Lady Raglan or Tudor pageants or medieval misericords. But the image will feel right to them, instinctively right, because the need behind it will still exist. The need to see ourselves not as rulers standing above the earth, but as participants within it. There is humility in that recognition, and also relief. We do not have to hold the world up alone. We are held within it. The soil carries us. The cycles continue beyond us. The turning does not depend on our awareness, only our response. And so the watcher in the stone is not only watching, he is reflecting. When you look up at him, you're seeing a question carved in oak and ivy. Will you remember? Not in theory, not in aesthetic appreciation, but in practice, in how you walk across land, in how you treat what grows, in whether you see trees as background or as kin. He does not demand perfection. Nature has never required perfection. It requires balance, reciprocity, attention. The Green Man is attention made visible. A face that says, look back, look outward, look inward. Notice the cycle. Notice the exchange. Notice the quiet persistence of green pushing through cracks you thought were permanent. And maybe that is the final image we leave with. Not a cathedral, not a coronation, not a festival, but a single shoot breaking through stone. Small, almost fragile, and yet unstoppable. That shoot carries the same story as the knight who would not die, the dancer wrapped in branches, the carving hidden in shadow. Life returns, not identical, not unchanged, but returning nonetheless. The Green Man has never been about nostalgia for a lost past. He is about continuity, about the truth that no matter how complex our systems become, they're still nested inside something older and wider and greener. So when you finish this story and step back into your day, into traffic, into screens, into noise, remember that beyond the walls, the canopy is still shifting in the wind. Roots are still threading through dark soil. Rivers are still carving stone. And somewhere, whether in carved arch or living woodland, the face framed in leaves remains. Not fading, not advancing, simply present, as he has always been, as he may always be, weaving forward from that presence. Imagine the world in miniature, the soil beneath your shoes, the insects crawling unseen, the fungi threading an invisible network below the surface. Every leaf that falls is not merely decay, it is conversation. Nutrients recycled, energy transferred, stories whispered in chemical signals. The Green Man is embedded in this dialogue. He is not only stone or wood, he is process. He is the subtle choreography of life continuing without pause. Notice how he appears in unlikely places. Cracks in sidewalks, moss on abandoned walls, vines climbing chain-link fences. His insistence is quiet but persistent. He teaches that resilience is often hidden, that vitality often thrives where humans least expect it. And in that persistence, there's a mirror for ourselves. How do we grow through constraints? How do we flourish in unexpected niches? How do we maintain integrity while constantly adapting? The Green Man is patient. He does not rush evolution. He does not plead for attention. Yet, in the act of noticing him, we are invited to align ourselves with his rhythm, to become conscious participants in the cycles of giving and receiving. He embodies the subtle ethic. Exist lightly, impact thoughtfully, return generously. He reminds us that every action has reverberation. The drop of water, the placement of a seed, the choice to cut or preserve. These are echoes that travel through webs unseen. The face in leaves is not static. It is a lens through which we perceive our own agency within vast, interconnected systems. And if we carry this awareness forward, we see the Green Man not only in trees or carvings, but in ourselves, in our breaths, our choices, our moments of attention. He asks, will you notice continuity? Will you honor the invisible exchanges that sustain life? Will you let your own actions participate in the ongoing cycle rather than interrupt it? In every act of stewardship, every gesture of care, he emerges, not as a myth frozen in time, but as an invitation, a gentle, insistent prompt to remember that life is always negotiating balance, and we are neither masters nor bystanders. We are co-authors. And so, we move forward, carrying his reminder in the spaces between our thoughts, the pauses in our speech, the quiet gestures that ripple through the world. Always observing, always participating, always returning. From this understanding, the Green Man's message deepens. He asks us to recognize patterns, cycles, and connections not just in nature, but in ourselves and our communities. Life is not linear. It spirals, loops back, and intersects in unexpected ways. Seasons remind us that growth and decay coexist, that endings are beginnings in disguise. The leaves that fall nourish new life. Challenges and hardships nourish our resilience. By attuning to these rhythms, we learn patience and humility. He also challenges perception. Look closely at the ordinary, the weeds in the sidewalk cracks, the roots breaking through stone, the moss spreading silently across forgotten walls. The ordinary is extraordinary when seen through his lens. He whispers, the sacred is not separate from the everyday. It is embedded within it. Awareness transforms routine gestures into acts of participation in the living web. A careful step, a mindful breath, a deliberate choice becomes a conversation with the world, an echo of the cycles the Green Man embodies. And in this way, he becomes both guide and mirror. He shows us resilience, adaptation, and quiet strength, while reflecting our own capacities for care, creativity, and connection. He reminds us that we are not outside of nature's processes, but integral threads in the intricate tapestry. Life is a network of giving and receiving, and awareness is the key that allows us to see the threads clearly enough to walk lightly, leaving space for growth, for renewal, for continuation. The Green Man is patient. He waits in the undergrowth, in the corners of old cathedrals, in the veins of leaves, in the quiet moments of our attention. And when we notice, truly notice, we step into a dialogue with time, with growth, and with ourselves. We become participants in an ongoing story far larger than any one of us, yet intimately connected to every leaf, every root, every breath. The Green Man does not merely invite observation. He calls for engagement. Awareness alone is not enough. It must transform into action. Caring for the soil, planting trees, tending gardens, protecting wild spaces. These are not symbolic gestures, but tangible ways to honor the cycles he embodies. Even small actions ripple outward. A seed sown today may become a tree that shelters generations. By participating, we acknowledge our responsibility within the web of life, rather than pretending to stand apart from it. He also teaches the art of balance. Growth cannot be forced. Too much interference disrupts natural rhythms. Yet passivity allows decay and neglect to dominate. There is a middle path, a dance between intervention and letting be, between human intention and the wisdom inherent in nature. Observing patterns, understanding timing, and choosing when to act becomes a form of reverence. In this, the Green Man is a teacher of subtlety. Power is not in domination, but in alignment. Not in possession, but in stewardship. Through engagement, the lessons of the Green Man extend beyond a natural world. They touch how we relate to each other, communities, families, friends. Reciprocity, patience, adaptability, respect for unseen systems, all mirror the ways of the wild. He shows that our personal growth, our creativity, our resilience is inseparable from the world we inhabit. By nurturing the environment, we nurture ourselves. By honoring cycles, we honor our own rhythms of learning, rest, and renewal. The Green Man's wisdom is ultimately about integration. We are not isolated beings navigating a chaotic world. We are threads woven into a living tapestry. To walk in his presence is to recognize that every choice matters, every gesture echoes, every life is connected. It is a call to mindfulness in action, a life lived consciously in harmony with cycles, with seasons, and with the quiet intelligence of the natural world. The Green Man also embodies mystery and paradox. He is both present and hidden, ancient and timeless, a reminder that life contains layers we cannot always perceive. His leaves may obscure his face, yet through that concealment, clarity emerges. Sometimes what is unseen shapes our world more profoundly than what is visible. This teaches patience and humility, lessons in understanding that the world is not ours to command, but ours to listen to. Seasons themselves are his teachers. Spring bursts with promise, summer flourishes with abundance, autumn withdraws with reflection, winter rests in silence. Each stage carries meaning. Growth is followed by harvest, and even decay has purpose. The Green Man is not merely a figure of exuberance, but also a symbol of restraint, of knowing when to yield, when to conserve, and when to simply witness. He invites us to notice details often overlooked. The subtle curve of a vine, the pattern of bark, the whisper of wind through leaves. In these small phenomena, we find guidance, an unspoken reminder that attention is a form of care and that the natural world communicates in rhythms rather than words. By attuning ourselves, we learn to perceive the interconnections that sustain life, the quiet networks of energy and nourishment that bind all living things. Ritual and storytelling are central to the Green Man's presence. Across cultures and centuries, people have marked his influence through festivals, carvings, and myths. He is celebrated in midsummer revelries, hidden in church stonework, and whispered about in folk tales. These acts are not mere homage. They are acts of remembering, a way for humans to acknowledge their dependence on the cycles of nature. Through story, his lessons are carried forward. That life is continuous, that every ending contains a beginning, and that we are participants, not masters, in the dance of growth and decay. By engaging with these traditions, humans form a bridge between the past and the present. We see ourselves in the patterns of the natural world, mirrored in the carvings of leaves and vines. The Green Man thus becomes a teacher of empathy, reminding us to recognize the life around us, to respect its rhythms, and to act with awareness. Rituals, whether grand or private, anchor us to these lessons, giving form to otherwise intangible truths about existence, balance, and renewal. In the modern world, the Green Man's relevance persists, though often in subtler ways. Urbanization, technology, and fast-paced living have distanced many from the natural cycles that once defined human life. Yet the symbols of the Green Man, leaves, vines, and the intricate interweaving of life, still appear in art, literature, and even architecture, quietly reminding us of our connection to the earth. People who cultivate gardens, care for forests, or practice mindfulness in nature are, in a sense, honoring the Green Man's legacy. His presence invites reflection. How can we live in harmony with our environment? How do we respect the cycles that sustain us? By observing and participating in the rhythms of nature, we reclaim a sense of balance. The Green Man teaches that growth and decay are not opposites, but parts of the same ongoing process. This insight is particularly poignant in today's era of environmental crisis, where understanding and cooperating with natural systems is crucial. In this way, the Green Man remains a guide, not just a relic of myth, but a symbol of sustainable living, resilience, and reverence for life itself. In contemporary spirituality, the Green Man often serves as a personal symbol of renewal and creative inspiration. Artists, writers, and poets draw upon his imagery to explore themes of transformation, growth, and the cycles of life. In rituals or meditative practices, some people invoke the Green Man as a way to connect more deeply with nature, to honor seasonal changes, or to awaken their own inner vitality. This connection is not limited to formal spiritual practice. Even simple acts, planting a tree, tending a garden, walking through a forest, can be a form of communion with the green man's energy. The underlying message is consistent. Life is interconnected, and humans are an integral part of the web of existence. Recognizing this fosters mindfulness, gratitude, and a sense of responsibility for the world around us. In essence, the green man is both a guardian and a muse, reminding us that life is ever renewing and that we can participate in its cycles consciously and creatively. The green man also appears prominently in festivals and cultural celebrations. In parts of Europe, especially the British Isles, green man imagery is incorporated into springtime and midsummer rituals, often appearing in processions, masks, and dances. These festivities celebrate fertility, the abundance of nature, and the renewal of life after winter. Even in modern times, such celebrations retain a symbolic link to ancient reverence for the natural world, blending folklore, community, and seasonal cycles. Beyond festivals, the green man has found a place in literature, architecture, and popular culture. Medieval churches and cathedrals often feature his carved visage, sometimes hidden among foliage, suggesting a subtle acknowledgement of nature within sacred spaces. In contemporary media, the green man is used to evoke mystery, wilderness, and the timeless connection between humanity and the earth. His enduring presence across centuries underscores a universal human fascination with growth, renewal, and the hidden powers of nature. In modern times, the green man has become a symbol not only of nature's vitality, but also of ecological awareness and environmentalism. Artists, writers, and spiritual practitioners often invoke the green man to emphasize the importance of living in harmony with the natural world. In gardens, public spaces, and eco-conscious art, his image serves as a reminder of the cycles of growth, decay, and renewal that sustain life. For some, encountering the green man is a deeply personal experience, inspiring reflection on one's relationship with nature and the passage of time. He embodies both the beauty and the mystery of the natural world, a reminder that life persists, regenerates, and flourishes even in the face of human impact and change. This modern interpretation bridges ancient folklore with contemporary environmental ethics, showing that the green man remains relevant as a symbol of life, resilience, and interconnectedness. Across different cultures, the green man appears in varied forms and stories. In Celtic and British folklore, he is often connected with the forest, fertility, and seasonal cycles. In Mediterranean traditions, similar figures represent vegetation spirits or deities tied to agriculture and harvest. In literature, the green man shows up as a mystical or guiding presence, symbolizing nature's wisdom and the hidden forces of life. Even in modern fantasy fiction, echoes of the green man appear as forest guardians, earth spirits, or symbols of renewal, demonstrating his enduring appeal across time and geography. His symbolic leaf-covered visage, often carved in stone or wood, serves as a reminder of humanity's deep-rooted connection to nature, a connection that transcends specific myths and speaks to universal themes of life, growth, and renewal. Green man imagery is widespread in architecture and art, especially in medieval churches and cathedrals across Europe. Stone carvings, wooden panels, and stained glass often depict his leafy face, sometimes with vines or branches sprouting from his mouth, symbolizing life continuously emerging from nature. Beyond religious settings, green man motifs appear in gardens, public sculptures, and even modern decorative arts, showing how this ancient symbol has been adapted over time. In popular culture, the green man has inspired fantasy literature, films, and video games, often as a guardian of forests or an embodiment of nature's power. Authors and artists use him to explore themes of environmental stewardship, the cyclical nature of life, and humanity's bond with the natural world, ensuring that this enigmatic figure remains relevant in contemporary storytelling. Psychologically and spiritually, the green man is often seen as a symbol of regeneration, renewal, and the unconscious connection humans have with nature. In Jungian terms, he can be interpreted as an archetype representing the life force and the cyclical patterns of growth, decay, and rebirth inherent in the natural world. His image reminds people of the importance of balance between civilization and wilderness, human activity, and ecological harmony. Spiritually, some modern pagan and neo-Druidic traditions honor the Green Man as a deity or guardian spirit of forests, crops, and seasonal change. Rituals and celebrations around him often coincide with spring or harvest festivals, emphasizing fertility, vitality, and the eternal rhythm of life. Even in contemporary environmental movements, the Green Man serves as a powerful icon for ecological awareness and the sacredness of the natural world. Historically, Green Man carvings appear across Europe, particularly in churches, cathedrals, and other medieval structures. In England, France, and Italy, he is often depicted on misericords, corbels, and capitals, sometimes as a solitary face sprouting leaves, other times surrounded by intricate foliage or intertwined with other figures. Each region had its stylistic quirks. For example, in France, green men often appear with acanthus leaves, while in England, oak leaves and ivy are more common. Some carvings are quite grotesque, blending human features with fantastical plant forms, while others are more serene and harmonious, suggesting different symbolic interpretations. The widespread presence of these figures in religious architecture hints at a subtle integration of pre-Christian nature worship into Christian contexts, preserving ancient ideas of fertility, protection, and a life-giving force of nature under a new spiritual framework. Beyond architecture, the Green Man has influenced art, literature, and modern culture. In paintings, illustrations, and even tattoos, he often symbolizes the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth, connecting humanity to nature. Writers and poets have drawn on his imagery to evoke themes of renewal, the wildness of the natural world, and the mysterious forces that govern growth and decay. In contemporary culture, the Green Man sometimes appears in festivals, eco-spiritual practices, and pagan traditions, celebrating seasonal changes and the sacredness of the environment. His adaptability across centuries highlights a persistent human fascination with nature as both a literal and metaphorical source of life, suggesting that the Green Man is not just a relic of the past, but a living symbol of our ongoing relationship with a natural world. Here's the next long part, focusing on the Green Man in folklore and myth. The Green Man is not only a striking artistic motif, but also a figure deeply embedded in folklore and myth, representing themes of life, death, rebirth, and the intricate relationship between humans and nature. Across centuries and cultures, the Green Man appears under different names, forms, and roles, yet he consistently embodies the power and mystery of the natural world. In European folklore, the Green Man is often associated with forest spirits, woodland deities, or nature guardians. His image evokes the life force of plants and trees, symbolizing growth, fertility, and the cyclical patterns of the seasons. In many myths, he is a figure who disappears and reappears with the changing year. In spring, he emerges as a youthful, vigorous figure heralding renewal. In autumn, he is portrayed as older, withering, or entwined with fallen leaves, reflecting the decline before winter. This seasonal cycle aligns him with ancient agricultural and solar myths, connecting human survival to the rhythms of the earth. One of the most common interpretations of the Green Man is his role as a mediator between humanity and the natural world. Folkloric tales often describe him as a protector of forests, appearing to warn or punish those who disrespect nature. Hunters who harm the forest recklessly might encounter his wrath, while those who act with respect and humility may be blessed with abundance. In this sense, the Green Man embodies both the nurturing and disciplinary aspects of nature, a reminder that life is sustained through balance and reverence. In some traditions, the Green Man is closely linked to the figure of the Wild Man, or Wood Woes, a hairy, human-like being dwelling in the forests, covered in leaves and living outside human society. Unlike the Green Man's typically architectural and symbolic depiction, The wild man is more corporeal and narrative, appearing in medieval tales as a mysterious, sometimes fearsome figure of untamed natural power. Folklorists often connect these figures, seeing the green man as the symbolic, immortalized face of the same woodland spirit. The green man also appears in seasonal festivals and rituals, particularly those celebrating fertility, growth, and the changing year. In England and parts of Europe, May Day celebrations, harvest festivals, and other seasonal events feature green men or participants dressed in leafy costumes, dancing or parading to honor vegetation and encourage abundance. These ritualistic performances reinforce the connection between humans and nature, transforming the symbolic green man into a living, communal presence. Beyond Europe, analogous figures appear in other mythologies. In Celtic traditions, deities such as Cernunnos, the horned god of fertility, forests, and animals, share attributes with the green man, representing the vital, generative forces of nature. In Middle Eastern and Asian folklore, spirits or gods of vegetation and rivers perform similar roles, guarding the fertility of the land, mediating seasonal cycles, and teaching humanity about the consequences of ecological imbalance. These cross-cultural parallels demonstrate that the green man archetype taps into universal human concerns about survival, growth, and the ethical relationship with the natural world. The green man also embodies psychological and symbolic dimensions explored in modern mythological studies. Jungian interpretations often describe him as an archetype representing the unconscious connection to nature, creativity, and regeneration. The face in the foliage motif reflects humanity's recognition of its dependency on life beyond the self and its awareness of the cycles that govern existence. Dreams or visions of the green man, according to some folklore psychologies, signify renewal, transformation, or a call to reconnect with one's natural instincts and life-giving surroundings. In literature and popular culture, the green man continues to appear as a mythical figure, sometimes overtly, sometimes subtly. Writers, poets, and artists draw upon his imagery to evoke mystery, the tension between civilization and wilderness, and the enduring power of the earth. Modern fantasy literature often recasts him as a forest guardian or elemental being, bridging the gap between ancient folklore and contemporary storytelling. His presence in novels, films, and games highlights humanity's ongoing fascination with the interplay of natural and supernatural forces, life and decay, civilization and wildness. Ultimately, the green man in folklore and myth serves as a timeless reminder that humanity is never separate from nature. He teaches that respect for the earth, acknowledgement of natural cycles, and awareness of life's regenerative powers are essential to survival and spiritual fulfillment. Whether as a carved face in stone, a dancing figure in a festival, or a character in modern fiction, the green man continues to symbolize the eternal bond between human culture and the living world. In modern times, the green man has experienced a remarkable resurgence, extending far beyond medieval church carvings and folklore. Today, he functions not only as a symbol of myth and legend, but also as an icon of ecological awareness, environmental activism, and a human desire to reconnect with nature. His enduring appeal lies in his ability to bridge ancient traditions with contemporary concerns, reminding society of the vital interdependence between humans and the natural world. One of the most visible manifestations of the green man in modern culture is in art and architecture. Contemporary artists and sculptors frequently reinterpret the motif, blending traditional leafy faces with modern aesthetics, abstract forms, or environmental themes. Public art installations often feature green man-inspired sculptures in parks, gardens, and urban green spaces, signaling an effort to integrate nature into everyday life. By placing the green man in spaces dominated by human construction, these works serve as visual reminders that nature persists, even in concrete-dominated environments, and that humans have a responsibility to honor and protect it. In literature and popular media, the green man has become a versatile figure representing environmental consciousness, magical realism, and the tension between modern civilization and the natural world. Fantasy novels often portray him as a guardian of forests or an elemental force that responds to ecological destruction. Graphic novels, video games, and films increasingly depict him as a symbol of environmental resistance, embodying the voice of nature in a world threatened by deforestation, pollution, and climate change. These representations allow audiences to explore ecological ethics through narrative, translating an ancient symbol into a modern moral framework. The Green Man is also closely associated with contemporary paganism, Wicca, and other earth-centered spiritual movements. In these contexts, he is revered as a deity or archetype of fertility, renewal, and the cyclical nature of life. Seasonal festivals, ritual celebrations, and solstice ceremonies often include Green Man imagery, echoing the traditional European customs while adapting them for modern spiritual practice. By connecting ancient symbolism with personal and communal spiritual experience, the Green Man reinforces the idea that humans are part of a larger ecological and cosmic network. Environmental and ecological movements have also adopted the Green Man as a mascot for sustainability and conservation. His image appears on posters, campaigns, and educational materials promoting forest preservation, organic gardening, and responsible stewardship of natural resources. The Green Man embodies the principle that human prosperity depends on healthy ecosystems and that environmental neglect can have profound consequences. In this sense, he is both a symbol and a call to action, a reminder that the cycles of nature are not merely aesthetic but essential to life itself. Interestingly, modern interpretations often emphasize the Green Man as a symbol of resilience and regeneration in the face of human impact, just as his traditional image represents the cyclical rebirth of vegetation. Contemporary Green Man narratives highlight nature's ability to recover when given the opportunity. Urban gardening initiatives, rewilding projects, and ecological restoration efforts sometimes adopt Green Man imagery to inspire communities, blending myth with practical environmental stewardship. This modern ecological Green Man embodies hope, continuity, and the interconnectedness of all living systems. Beyond art, literature, and activism, the Green Man has entered public consciousness as a cultural emblem of ecological mindfulness. He encourages a mindset that values sustainability, seasonal awareness, and the protection of biodiversity. In classrooms and environmental education programs, the Green Man serves as a teaching tool, making complex ecological principles accessible through storytelling, visual symbolism, and participatory rituals. By personifying the forces of nature, he allows individuals to engage emotionally and intellectually with the environment, fostering empathy and a sense of responsibility. In a broader sense, the Green Man's resurgence reflects a growing societal recognition of the consequences of environmental neglect. In a world facing climate change, deforestation, and mass species extinction, his presence reminds humanity that nature is not an endless resource, but a delicate system in which every action has consequences. By bridging folklore, spirituality, and ecological consciousness, the Green Man continues to evolve as a living symbol of hope, warning, and renewal, an enduring connection between the ancient past and the urgent ecological challenges of the present. Here's the next long part. Symbolism and psychological interpretations of the Green Man is more than a decorative motif or an ecological emblem. He is a rich psychological symbol that resonates with the human unconscious. Across centuries and cultures, the Green Man embodies the interplay between life, death, and rebirth, serving as a potent archetype for the cycles of nature, creativity, and the human psyche. His leaf-covered visage, emerging from stone or wood, conveys a timeless message. Humans are inseparable from the natural world, and our inner lives mirror the rhythms of growth and decay that govern all living things. From a Jungian perspective, the Green Man can be interpreted as an archetype of the wild man or the nature spirit, representing instincts, intuition, and the untamed aspects of the psyche. His foliage mask symbolizes the boundary between the conscious self and the unconscious forces that shape behavior and perception. Just as the leaves hide and reveal his face simultaneously, the Green Man reminds us that growth, creativity, and renewal often arise from hidden or shadowed parts of the mind. Dreams featuring Green Man imagery frequently emerge during periods of personal transformation, signaling the need to reconnect with natural rhythms, confront inner chaos, or embrace creative potential. Psychologically, the Green Man is also associated with fertility, regeneration, and the life force. He embodies the cyclical processes of birth, growth, death, and rebirth, not only in the natural world, but in human experience. Life transitions, such as adolescence, loss, career changes, or spiritual awakening, can be understood through Green Man symbolism. His perennial presence in art and folklore suggests that humans have long recognized the necessity of renewal, the shedding of old patterns, the cultivation of new growth, and the integration of past experiences into a resilient, evolving self. In literature and mythological studies, the Green Man is often linked to motifs of liminality, the thresholds between life and death, wilderness and civilization, or the conscious and unconscious mind. He represents a space where boundaries dissolve, allowing humans to encounter primal energies that are both creative and destructive. This liminal aspect aligns with his historical role in medieval churches, where Green Man carvings adorned doorways and arches, symbolizing protection, fertility, and the mysterious power of nature beyond human control. The juxtaposition of a wild, leafy figure in sacred architecture emphasizes humanity's simultaneous reverence for and unease with the untamed forces of the natural world. The Green Man also functions as a mirror for environmental psychology, reflecting how human well-being is intimately connected to nature. Studies consistently show that exposure to green spaces, gardens, and natural environments reduces stress, enhances cognitive function, and fosters emotional resilience. In this context, the Green Man becomes a symbolic embodiment of our need for ecological connection. His image evokes a deep, instinctual recognition that thriving communities, psychologically, socially, and environmentally, depend on maintaining harmony with the natural world. Spiritually, the Green Man represents the integration of opposites, life and death, human and nature, conscious and unconscious. He is a reminder that growth emerges from cycles of decay, that creativity arises from unseen sources, and that life is sustained by forces often beyond human understanding. This symbolism resonates in contemporary practices of mindfulness, ecological spirituality, and holistic wellness, where the Green Man can serve as a guiding figure for inner balance and external harmony. He encourages introspection, respect for natural cycles, and acknowledgement of the subtle, interconnected patterns that shape both personal and collective existence. In therapeutic and creative contexts, the Green Man can act as a catalyst for personal growth. Writers, artists, and counselors often invoke his image to explore themes of transformation, resilience, and reconnection with natural instincts. By embodying both the wild and nurturing aspects of life, he provides a symbolic framework for integrating suppressed emotions, untapped creativity, or fragmented experiences into a cohesive and thriving self. In this sense, the Green Man is not merely a relic of folklore, but a living psychological tool, a bridge between ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding of human consciousness. Ultimately, the Green Man's enduring power lies in his universality. Across cultures, epochs, and disciplines, he continues to inspire awe, reflection, and reverence. He is simultaneously an ecological guardian, a spiritual guide, and a psychological archetype, a symbol that reminds humanity of its essential place within the cycles of life. His leafy visage calls attention to the hidden growth within ourselves, urging awareness of both our inner nature and the world around us. By understanding the Green Man through the lens of symbolism and psychology, we gain insight into the intricate web connecting myth, mind, and environment, revealing a profound truth. The life force that animates the natural world also pulses within the human spirit. The Green Man, whether appearing as a leafy face in medieval carvings, a forest deity in Celtic mythology, or an analogous figure in cultures across the world, represents a timeless symbol of humanity's connection to nature. Across continents and eras, this archetype embodies life, death, and regeneration, reminding us of the cyclical rhythms that govern both the natural world and human existence. From Cernunnos in Celtic lore to Zyp-Totec in Mesoamerica, these figures emphasize the inseparable bond between humans and the environment, as well as the spiritual and psychological significance of growth, renewal, and transformation. In modern times, the Green Man continues to inspire art, literature, and ecological thought, serving as a potent reminder of our responsibility toward the natural world. The universal presence of this archetype suggests that despite cultural differences, humanity shares a deep, instinctive understanding of life's interdependence with nature. Ultimately, the Green Man encourages us to recognize, respect, and nurture the natural cycles that sustain life, blending ancient wisdom with contemporary environmental consciousness. In essence, the Green Man is more than folklore or ornamentation. It is a living symbol of renewal, a bridge between past and present, and a call to harmonize with the natural world that sustains us.